Welcome back to Watch the Bookerman and to episode number 51 of Paul Heyman's TNA 2010. We're just going to go straight into the show this week, beginning with a recap, the final moments of AJ Styles versus Tyler Black being replayed. Once we see the footage of that 20-minute time limit elapsing, we also get some of the post-match reaction. Both competitors wanted to keep going. The commentators then welcome the viewers to the show, Taz putting over the performance of Tyler Black, who, having convincingly won on his in-ring debut the previous week, took one of the best wrestlers on the planet to the limit. Maranello adds both men are desperate to face off once again. That's what we've been hearing all week. What will come of that remains to be seen, but we do know that Abyss will be in action up next, the number one contender to the World Heavyweight Championship. The first thing I'm going to do is handle the gimmick change. It was noted on a previous episode that his gimmick was stale, so he gets a very good rating for a savage already in the ring alongside an intimidated looking local competitor called Tommy Taylor. James Mitchell introduces his monster Abyss to the ring, and again, this isn't a great segment. Now it's actually a pay-per-view main event, I am beginning to think that maybe we're running a risk here of hurting the storyline overall, but there is still the go home show to hopefully pick this back up. Once Abyss reaches the 6 sides, James Mitchell takes his global championship from him and lays it on the canvas. Mitchell then invites Kurt to take a seat at ringside, with a steel chair shown having been set up at the bottom of the ramp. Kurt Angle comes out, but pushes the steel chair aside. He's furious about what happened last week, Abyss attacking him in the dark, and he wants his revenge immediately. James Mitchell, however, reminds him that Abyss has a match scheduled, and the young man in the ring deserves this opportunity. Kurt Angle actually accepts this and unfolds the chair, takes a seat at ringside. A good performance from Abyss, so that has given him a little bit of a boost, I think. Maybe it's just him having a good night, but it definitely seems to have had some positive effect. And he takes 4 minutes and 27 to beat Tommy Taylor. He could have probably done it in just the 27, but he really wanted to torture and torment him to the point where Kurt Angle is seeing this brutality and almost wants to step in and get involved, but he does manage to keep his cool until after the bell, when immediately he gets up from his chair and heads towards Abyss. The monster has barely stepped out of first gear in the match, and he's ready for Kurt Angle. Sometimes it doesn't matter whether you're ready, because Kurt Angle can take anybody down if he wants to, basically, and he manages to get Abyss off his feet for the first time in over a year. Abyss finds himself on the defensive. Nobody's really got the better of him in a one-on-one exchange since I've been booking, certainly, and Angle lays shots into his turning point challenger. This isn't the technical wrestler we're seeing. This is a pissed off World Heavyweight Champion who is just taking out his frustrations. Kurt returns to his feet and looks to work over the ankle of Abyss, perhaps trying to send a message there that he wants to make him tap out at the pay-per-view. From behind, James Mitchell, who was at ringside, has taken the chair and swings it at Kurt Angle. The World Heavyweight Champion no-sells the shot. He is unaffected by what is, to be fair, a weak shot from James Mitchell, but this does turn his attention towards Abyss's manager, and the monster is able to take advantage of this eventually. Abyss hits Kurt Angle with 3 consecutive chokeslams, with James Mitchell then taking a microphone once Kurt Angle is decisively down, and he warns Kurt Angle that he will leave Turning Point just like he left Bound for Glory, and just like he is now, down and out. This time, however, his monster will be standing over him as the new World Heavyweight Champion. So a bit of a better segment overall. James Mitchell still looking dreadful, but hopefully we can use Abyss and Kurt Angle more to push this storyline into the last week. We then get some of the follow-up to that match last week that main evented the time limit draw, as AJ Styles is shown entering the office of Paul Heyman, and he's pretty clear he wants a rematch with Tyler Black, no time limits, as soon as possible. Paul Heyman tries to change the subject, praising Tyler Black and telling Styles that he was matched every single step of the way last week, again trying to just needle him a little bit. Styles says that this was never about the ability of Tyler Black, or the New Age for that matter, and Heyman knows it. AJ wants to know when he can make the match happen, because AJ is ready right now. Paul Heyman says it certainly won't be tonight, but he's sure that they will go at it again at some point in the future, even if he wanted to make the match. The New Age aren't at the building. And besides, AJ Styles versus Tyler Black 2, that sounds like a pay-per-view match if Heyman ever did hear one. Styles isn't happy with this, obviously, but realises there's little he can do. Mickie James is then interviewed by Christy Hem in order to promote her singles in-ring debut later tonight. Mickie James will face Velvet Sky, and she says that while it is the first time she's ever facing her, she has had her eyes on the whole Knockouts division for a very long time. Mickie puts over the cunning Velvet Sky, but she's confident that she has enough nous and experience to secure the win on the night. She adds that she knows the beautiful people will stop at nothing to get their hands on the Knockouts Tag Team Championships, but she knows also that she can rely on Tara tonight if they try anything underhanded. So a fairly basic segment, but Mickie James doing a good job as we go into the second match of the night, and it's a fairly straightforward victory for LAX as they continue to rise up the ranks in the tag team division. Big Rob and Brutus Magnus are back together. Douglas Williams is currently focusing on the World X Cup on Explosion, so the two British guys who were at something of a loose end are back together. I mean, it's an 8-minute match nearly, so they do put up a decent fight and they do get some offense in, but again, this match is about trying to put over Hernandez and Homicide, who put in two strong performances themselves as they celebrate standing tall in the ring. Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin come out. The Motor City Machine Guns carry their World Tag Team Championships with them as they join Hernandez and Homicide inside the six sides. MCMG tell LAX that they've been impressed with them since their reunion, and they've got 2 words in response to their challenge from last week: we accept. They then offer a hand to their Turning Point opponents, a gesture which the commentators note was rejected by Generation Me a couple of weeks ago, and this time Hernandez and Homicide accept. Homicide, however, grabs the microphone from Alex Shelley as the champions turn to leave, saying that the respect between them gets left at the door as they walk into Turning Point. Hernandez adds that they intend to leave the pay-per-view as 4-time World Tag Team Champions. So 2 face teams going up against each other, but with Homicide and Hernandez, they're never going to play nicely whether they like you or they don't. Switching gears, the commentators look back on the previous week's episode of Explosion, a show which marked the return of the World X Cup. Mara and Allo and Taz talk through the competitors involved and the results from match week 1. I went through this on the previous episode, so I'll just put the results on screen. This week on Explosion, we will see Homicide face Matt Jackson in the main event, Puerto Rico versus USA. All the countries in action on this Saturday's episode of Explosion, and following up that build, we go to Sonjay Dutt, who was one of the hosts of the competition alongside Larry Sweeney. Chalk and cheese those two, but Jeremy Borash confirms that as well as being the co-host of Explosion's World X Cup, Sonjay Dutt will face Kazuchika Okada for the X Division Championship at Turning Point. Dutt first does look to put over the World X Cup, saying that the first week was a great sign of things to come. Some wrestlers that we're familiar with and some that we don't know, but all of them absolutely on the level to represent their nations. Sonjay knows how high the level of competition is because he himself is a former winner of that tournament. He has, however, never held the X Division Championship, and that is the number one reason that he came back to TNA. For him, that title would represent validation of everything he has done in his career. He has always tried to be an out-of-the-box thinker, and to him, that's exactly what the X Division is all about. It's not about weight limits, it's about no limits, and there are no limits to what Sonjay Dutt is willing to do to get his hands on the title, gaining heat to his storyline as well as advancing the World X Cup storyline. And I'm really impressed with Sonjay Dutt since he came back to the company. He's doing a really, really good job of bringing a little bit of impetus back to the division and just having that presence of somebody every week talking about the X Division and how much they want to win the title more specifically. I think that does good things for the title overall. And speaking of good things, an 84 rated promo from Samoa Joe is really good, probably going to be one of the best segments on the show, if not the best. And he comes down to the ring and cuts a promo on his upcoming match with Bobby Lashley at Turning Point. This is something I quite like to do often with Joe. He's good at getting straight to the point, and that's exactly what we want to do. He says he's been hearing a lot of talk from Bobby Lashley, but he's only seen him in the ring a handful of times this year. That's the difference between those two competitors. But Joe doesn't mind hearing all the hype, because that is what will make his victory all the more sweet. Last year, it took the most crooked referee in the history of the business for Lashley to beat him, but in 10 nights' time, there can be no excuses. Joe also confirms that they're taking this final showdown to a place that Lashley will be very comfortable in and is very familiar with, the 6 sides of steel. This should be right up the street for the so-called dual sports cage fighting star, but in Joe's opinion, it doesn't matter if you're half pro wrestler and half MMA star when you half-ass both of them. he's ready for Turning Point, and whatever comes after that, he's going to be back in the ring, fighting to be at the top of TNA, and he's sure Lashley will enjoy another 6-month vacation after Joe kicks his ass and sends him packing. So a really good promo, gaining heat to the storyline, which may well be the hottest storyline going into the post-Bound for Glory pay-per-view. We then have a pre-recorded package introduced by Mauro, Ranallo and Taz, which features the first appearance of Jay Lethal since his Monsters Ball defeat at the hands of the Monster Abyss. Jay Lethal is shown moving into a new place as he and Maria unpack boxes in an empty room. Lethal shows signs that he still isn't 100% recovered from the Monsters Ball, but he speaks to the camera as he goes on about his business, talking about what he learned at Bound for Glory and what the last few months have taught him. Jay Lethal's lost friends, titles, and in some people's eyes, he's lost respect. He points out that he was just seconds away from defeating Abyss at Bound for Glory, but his instinct to protect his girlfriend kicked in. Jay believed that 10-10-10 would be the night that everything came together for him, which is why, from this moment, he isn't going to waste a second. Jay then turns to Maria and says that he's going to return to Impact next week, and there's something he just has to do. Maria looks confused by this. She obviously hasn't been pre-warned, but Lethal refuses to give anything away. All we know that he'll be back on next week's show, and the last match of the first hour sees Mickie James pick up a decisive victory over Velvet Sky, 6 minutes and 27, so it's not all one-way traffic, but it's certainly a decisive victory. We do have Angelina Love and Tara at ringside. I don't think I put the note in. Either way, the idea is that they're sort of sniping each other at ringside, maybe get a little bit physical with pushing, but nothing that detracts too much from the match, as Mickie James, like I said, hits the mick kick to secure the victory. After the match, Tara joins Mickie James in the middle of the ring, with the Knockouts Tag Team Champions expecting something from the New Age. They're also keeping their eye on the Beautiful People, but they back up the ramp. The commentators do remind us, though, that Paul Heyman said the New Age weren't at the building tonight, but of course there's going to be some skepticism to this claim. The New Age have jumped people multiple times already, so you can't take that too seriously. Nonetheless, Mickie James and Tara are left to stand tall in the ring, raising their titles as the New Age's Turning Point rematch is officially confirmed. Returning to the second hour of Impact, we get a decent backstage segment, albeit AJ Styles not doing well without a script to follow, but he is shown approaching Jeff Hardy and Sting in the back, and he says that apparently the New Age aren't here tonight. He doesn't buy it, but it does give them the chance to work something out, to talk about what the strategy is maybe to deal with this group. AJ says that he has an idea and it worked at Slammiversary against Bad Influence, but he understands that this is on a whole different level. He's seen Jeff Hardy and Sting stand up within the last couple of weeks, and he asks if they want to put the team back together. They have the chance to show the New Age exactly what TNA is about, and he can't think of 3 better people to come together to send that message. Sting likes the idea of reforming what was referred to as TNA's Dream Team at Slammiversary, as does Jeff Hardy based upon his fired up response. All 3 men definitely on board, joined in their determination not to be pushed aside or rolled over by the New Age. We then move into the 4th match of the evening, and before it, Bryan Danielson, who is a friend of Brian Kendrick and Paul London, who will be competing in that match, joins Mauro Ranallo and Taz at ringside with the intent of both commentating on the upcoming match and discussing his arrival in TNA. However, the 3-man booth soon becomes a 4-man booth as Desmond Wolfe brings a chair of his own and sits to the side of Taz. Wolfe still has his arm in a sling and makes it clear that he isn't here to fight, he's not here to cause any trouble. The start of this storyline was Bryan Danielson overshadowing a Desmond Wolfe win, and since then, including with the victory at Bound for Glory, Desmond Wolfe has sort of played second fiddle to him, but been desperate wherever he can to try and take that spotlight away from him, and they do bicker quite a bit on commentary. Bad Influence picking up a victory as they do this over the Hooligans in 10 minutes and 59, a competitive, even match. We kind of want to double down or even triple down on the cheating, so we want maybe a poke of the eye, a low blow and a roll up, all without the referee seeing. So we really want to hammer home that this is a very, very tainted victory, not just the case of them cheating, but Bad Influence willing to do whatever it takes. Brian Kendrick getting pinned by Christopher Daniels. It's a decent rating, all 4 of them doing pretty well. Frankie Kazarian's rating maybe a little bit of something to worry about, perhaps the benefit of his hot new move fading off a little bit, but nonetheless a decent 4th match again. And after the match, Kazarian and Daniels celebrate their tainted victory. Getting out of the ring, they understand that the hooligans are pissed off and are probably going to want to get some revenge immediately, so they're quickly up the ramp. Once they're at the top of the ramp, they're confronted by Bryan Danielson, who continues onto the ring after that. He made clear on commentary just how disgusted he was with their cheating. He's going to go now and check on Brian Kendrick and Paul London. Desmond Wolfe, on the other hand, who has previously had somewhat of a working relationship with Bad Influence, he sits by and he's laughing and he's just enjoying watching everything unfold. Once in the ring, Bryan Danielson speaks with Brian Kendrick, who is annoyed to have been pinned, but Bryan Danielson is then confronted by Paul London, who is also annoyed. He's letting his frustrations boil over, and he tells Danielson that this has nothing to do with him. He's really quite forceful in this, that he wants Bryan to just get out of there. Danielson understands this. He gets that London's mad. They're all friends, but this can happen when you're maybe not in the best run, and London and Kendrick certainly haven't been on their best form recently. Bryan does leave up the ramp and lets Kendrick and London deal with this on their own, but there's still a little bit of tension even between Kendrick and London after the match. Angelina Love and Velvet Sky are then shown in the locker room, with Love, who is ready for her match up next, approaching Velvet Sky, who looks to be in serious pain from her defeat to Mickie James. Angelina tells Velvet to get up and go, but Velvet stays sat down. Obviously, these two are usually very, very preppy. Angelina Love has all that energy. Sky doesn't. She's shaking her head. She's holding her neck. She can't come to the ring with Angelina tonight. She's in too much pain. Love looks shocked by this. She went out there and put herself at risk earlier with Tara on the other side of the ring. So she demands Velvet gets to her feet and comes with her. Velvet says that she's sorry, but she really can't go out there tonight. She's in severe pain. Angelina Love now kind of has no choice but to go it alone, but she's clearly not best pleased with her best friend's lack of willingness to come out to the ring. Before that 5th match, however, the commentators introduced footage from earlier today where Mike Tenay sat down with Jeff Jarrett. Following a brief exchange of pleasantries, Jeff Jarrett gets down to the serious business and discusses his upcoming match with Mr. Anderson at Turning Point. Jarrett emphasises that this match is about more than just the two of them. This is about TNA. Before Jeff can get too far into what he means by this, it has been a couple of minutes into the interview by this point, but the door to the room opens and we see Mr. Anderson. Anderson catches Jarrett completely off guard, lunging at the TNA founder and taking him off his chair and onto the ground. He hits a series of punches into the head of Jeff Jarrett, really laying it in, and eventually drawing blood from the forehead of his Turning Point opponent. With Jeff Jarrett down on the ground, Anderson tells Tenay that he can thank Jeremy Borash for telling him exactly where to find them, laughing at the notion of any loyalty between TNA Originals. So he's almost trying to turn the non-wrestlers against each other there. Just a further example of basically what the storyline's called, Anderson the asshole. He will do anything to wind anybody up, but he's also a brutal, vicious fighter, and that'll be all the more evident at Turning Point. ODB then picks up a surprise victory over Angelina Love, who is thrown off guard by the lack of having Velvet Sky at ringside, somebody who relies very much on outside interference for winning her matches. She didn't have anybody, while ODB had Brooke and Lacey at ringside. ODB with a quick cradle, so it's not the most decisive of victories, but with two very similar performances. I just felt like ODB could have done with a victory, and with Velvet being too hurt to help Angelina Love, that felt like a good time for it. And last week, or maybe the week before, Angelina had some cocky words towards ODB, calling her a loser, calling Brooke and Lacey losers. Well, ODB's got a little bit of revenge there, and Brooke and Lacey are delighted to see their mentor pick up a victory. Before the main event, a pre-recorded promo is aired which shows Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin sat on the apron prior to fans arriving at the Impact Zone. This is a match that will have been spoke about throughout the night, but I didn't put a specific segment in there to hype it or anything. It is Shelton Benjamin versus Robert Roode. WGTT respond to Beer Money's passionate promo last week, saying that for the first time since they got to TNA, they actually understood where Storm and Roode were coming from. Haas and Benjamin go on to explain why they call themselves wrestling's greatest tag team. That seems to be a particular bone of contention for Beer Money, but they say that it's about the fans seeing that name on a billing, or hearing the announcers saying it. It instantly creates an expectation to the paying customer. From the moment they step probably don't use the word customer. From the moment they step through the curtain, there is an immense pressure on the two of them to deliver and to give the fans what they paid for and exactly what each and every one of them deserves. They have to push themselves every single night, whether they're hurt, whether they're tired. They can't afford to have a bad day, whether it's a match like tonight on Impact or on pay-per-view like their match against Beer Money at Turning Point. Their name means that they are honor bound to bring their A game, and there can be no excuses from them no matter what. And we just sent them out 13 minutes, well 12 and a half. Shelton Benjamin actually a little bit worse than he usually is, but an 80 rating is a very strong main event, and that should mean that we get a good show overall with that Samoa Joe promo earlier. I think I did a steal the show match. Neither guy coming out of it looking particularly worse than the other, but there has to be a winner and a loser, and Shelton Benjamin is that winner with a pay dirt. Putting them in this position and just letting them go out there and prove how good they are is just, for me, the best and most simple way of putting them over. Even in defeat, having an excellent main event like that shows us that even though they're in tag teams and are primarily tag team competitors, these guys are just as good as the other guys at the top of the card who are fighting for the World Heavyweight Championship. I've said throughout with the tag team division, it is our aim that eventually these titles will be able to main event pay-per-views just like the World Heavyweight Championship can. We might be some way off that just yet, but I think Beer Money and Wrestling's Greatest Tag Team are two of the teams best positioned to do that. Shelton Benjamin is joined by Charlie Haas in the ring, with the commentator saying that Benjamin absolutely delivered on the pre-match words from Wrestling's Greatest Tag Team. They said that they have to deliver their A game, and Benjamin certainly did. Beer Money head up the ramp with Robert Roode far from happy with the defeat, but having come close, he showed just how evenly matched these two teams are. At Turning Point, it won't be a matter of individuals, however, as the question of who gets the next World Tag Team Championship shot is settled between these two teams. Next week, Impact will open with another match featuring members of these two duos, however, as Charlie Haas, the other side of Wrestling's Greatest Tag Team, goes one-on-one with the other side of Beer Money, James Storm. We come back for the main event segment of this episode of Impact with the New Age storyline. We are going to have to accept that for now, these ratings aren't quite going to hit the heights that we want. I've talked a lot about disappointing ratings tonight, but actually, this is probably going to be one of the best Impacts we've done, so strange how that works out sometimes. As for the segment itself, AJ Styles, Jeff Hardy and Sting make their way down to the 6 sides together, each man taking turns speaking about what TNA and pro wrestling means to them. Of course, AJ's going to talk about being an original, Sting talking about how it rejuvenated his career, and Jeff Hardy talking about his goal to become the World Heavyweight Champion and the fact that he's not going to let these newcomers get in the way of his rise to the top. But they do accept it. They know what it's like to be young, cocky punks like the New Age. They're not against change or evolution, but at the same time, they're not just going to let Jimmy Jacobs walk into this company and let his group steamroll their way through. They stand together with a simple message. If the New Age want to take TNA, they will have to do it over their dead bodies. Despite their reported absence and having not seen them throughout the night, Jimmy Jacobs walks out from the back, with Chris Hero, Claudio Castagnoli and Tyler Black quickly appearing behind the men in the ring. The Dream Team were half expecting this, and a brawl breaks out between the two sides. There's no clear dominant faction in this, both of them just swinging at each other, a chaotic way to end this episode of Impact, and it's clear that this brawl won't be under control anytime soon. Maro and Taz telling us we are out of time on tonight's show. Security are going to try and get some order here. Who knows what state we'll find these men in next week, but they sign off on tonight's Impact with a crazy way to end the show. The first time that we've had sort of a fair fight involving the New Age, and I just think having these three really well-established, strong characters in AJ Styles, Sting and Jeff Hardy, three guys who everybody watching TNA is super familiar with, and then on the other side you have three newcomers who, of course, all went on to have a lot of success in the business, but at this point in 2010 are these young upstarts who have a lot of potential. Not only by brawling with them and being their equals does it put them on the level of this TNA Dream Team, essentially the three biggest stars in the company. I also think it creates a cool dynamic with them going toe to toe with their counterparts, and while the ratings for the segments aren't particularly great and the storyline probably isn't doing that well in the heat, this is the storyline that I'm most excited by. A 79 is a very good episode. On Explosion, the World X Cup continued, and that's probably why a few of the people, like Roderick Strong, we've not seen him for a couple of weeks on, well, I think he was on last week's Impact, but he's not had matches on Impact, and it's because the 15 guys in this tournament will pretty much be focusing on the Explosion matches and probably won't be on Impact too much. Roderick Strong defeats Martin Stone to pick up points for his team. Eric Young beats Yoshihashi, and Homicide beats Matt Jackson. So 3 captains all picking up points, and you can see on screen there the current standings: 6 points for Canada, Puerto Rico and the US, Japan with 3, and the UK still with 0 points. Going into the final week of the first phase, there is a chance for anybody to still go through because of a couple of special extra point matches that I'll be doing, but I'll go into that when those shows actually come around. Martin Stone injured. He'll be able to work through it luckily, so no worries there. I've gained a user point for having 50 shows. I'm sure this is 51, so maybe one of the shows wasn't successful. That's really strange. Hector Guerrero likes what Nick Jackson's doing, that's good, and the Impact viewing figures stay pretty much as they always are. The Go Home show, like I said, next week. The pay-per-view in 9 days' time. Thank you very much for watching.